Well, good afternoon. It's certainly a delight to be here, really at the center and the heartbeat of an organic movement that needs to really not just sweep this country, but actually return the world to a process of how we rebuild, regenerate, and revitalize the ecological systems that produce food and life. For me to move from California, I jokingly say, you know, here's a fifth-generation Californian shoveling snow in Pennsylvania, and it's an odd thing for me to learn how to manage this stuff, but I would suggest that the work at the Institute has been so compelling to me, it has given me more hope than almost anything I have seen in my world travels. And I've had the privilege and sometimes the burden of being in over 85 countries over 3 decades. And what I learned by that is the ecology is declining very rapidly. The impact of humans and the way we've treated our environment has actually put us at risk. And I had looked for long and hard for actual solutions that could not just stop the decline, but what rebuilds, what revitalizes, what actually restores and regenerates what creates life. And of course, that always starts with the soil. It starts really from what we're standing on here today. And the organic industry understands this because one of the premises is you have to build the soil. Well, this is crucial when we consider that we're losing 1% of our topsoils every year. One of the things we realize is that's our biggest export item in this country, our topsoil. Well, conventional farming, as we say, the chemically dependent folk, in essence are the ones helping rapidly lose that topsoil because it breaks down the biology of the soil that will build soil structure and actually increase the amount of topsoil for us to farm. As I begin to really look at the research of the Rodale Institute, where I became informed rather rapidly of how powerful organic soil development is to realize that if you're using compost in your farm and reapplying that to your fields every 3rd year, you can actually sequester over a ton of carbon per acre. That equates to 7,000 pounds of carbon dioxide coming out of that atmosphere and going into the soil. If you just look at manure-based organic systems where you're spreading your dairy manures back into the field, that's going to equate to about 1,200 pounds of carbon each year. And those are significant numbers. If we begin to also look at just legume systems as a way to sequester carbon, it outperforms any kind of chemical no-till by 2 to 3 to 4 times as much. And this is the concern, I think, when it comes to policy, when we really look at, are we serious about climate change? Can we pass legislation that actually makes a difference in this country? We have to look at really the science and the biology, not just the politics or the special interests that want to impact our congressmen here and others trying to actually get logic through the system. So I think science is going to be crucial in these questions as we move forward in the process. Was recently briefing carbon markets in London, and the Europeans are waiting to watch US legislation come forward. They're waiting with billions of dollars, really, to invest in the carbon markets. And are we going to provide them with credible markets? Or, unfortunately, the Chicago Climate Exchange has kind of hooked their wagon to a questionable carbon sequester, and that's conventional no-till. If we look at conventional no-till farming, most recent studies are suggesting it's not sequestering any carbon in the soil at all. Well, this actually makes sense if you realize that we're trading carbon at depth and moving it towards the surface. The organic biological systems, on the other hand, start to take the carbon to depth. And that not only gives it less chance to volatilize and go up into the atmosphere, but secondarily, the biology itself wants to hold it there for up to 100 years, which adds a permanence factor that any kind of carbon crediting is going to be asking for. They're going to ask agriculture, how permanent is that? And how much can you accumulate, or they call it additivity, in their conversations. So these are where the organic systems start to jump ahead of any other agricultural conversation when we're talking about putting carbon away. I've had the opportunity to brief former Vice President Al Gore twice, and he gets soil now. He gets it as a big piece, and I'll be anxious to see in his new book that'll come out late this year. Incidentally, that's from the Rodale Press. I just threw that one in. But it will come out later this year, and see if he's really accentuated that in the system. Because what we realize now is, in these organic systems, if we were to transfer and change our farming practices in this country, and here's a new Farm Bill push, Ken, I would argue, is to say, let's pay for carbon and let's pay farmers handsomely for carbon. That would be an ecosystem service credit that all of us as we emit carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, would be transferring our carbon offset to a farmer who'd be putting it away for all of us and for future generations. So I wouldn't call this a subsidy. I would literally begin to look at this as a practical approach of fixing pollution that we're all contributing to. What we also know by is investing in carbon in soil, we clean up the waterways, and Pennsylvania alone has a $600 million annual bill to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. If they would just turn their farms organic, that nutrient load would diminish dramatically, and it would cost them next to nothing. If we look at the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico and the nutrient load that goes down the Mississippi River, organic systems greatly reduce that, plus the toxins are completely out of the system. So these are the kinds of practices, building the biological strength, moving into a legislative process that recognizes that soil is crucial to a solution. We actually can't solve the climate change crisis if you look at all of the elements we're trying to affect, unless we come back to the soil as one of the largest leverage points. So think about it. All farms in the United States, organic, we would put away 25% of all of our carbon dioxide emissions that the U.S. emits. Where is there a larger leverage point? If we would then move to pastures, rangeland, and grasslands and begin to manage them in mob grazing and rotational grazing and building the root systems of that plant, we'd actually probably most likely sequester the rest of it, and that's not even touching forests. So there's a way to a future that actually will give these young people here hope, and it happens to rest in biological support of the system of soil. It actually is what an organic focus is committed to and understands at its root, and it's the kind of thing that I'm so pleased to get to know the work that's going on here at Organic Valley and the commitment under the leadership here, under all of the farmers across this country have made to restoring the ecology of this planet. So this is about healthy people, this is about healthy soil, and my goodness, this is really about a healthy planet. Thank you very much.